Hello and welcome to ACR Assessment's podcast series with Eleanor. Today I've got with me Jacqui Gardner. Hello, Jacqui. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we are here to explore the question of how to prepare for law exams, tips and strategies. Now, Jacqui, you've got so much experience that students will be, they're so lucky to have you for those that actually have you in class. But that doesn't mean that Jackie's going to say no to those that aren't in her class. So, Jackie's a senior lecturer at DMU. She's qualified as a solicitor in private practice previously. So, she was a civil litigator and representing clients in courts and tribunals. You also worked for prestigious law firms you have, including Owen Mitchell, and you worked as a professional standards chair for the NHS and Leicester Police. I think you said in misconduct cases as well. You also taught several universities supporting undergraduate and postgraduate students with their exams. So obviously this is really right up your street, this topic for today. And you've also undertaken the role of external assessor for Silex, Macmillan and IMA. Here at the MU, you teach IPLS, constitutional and admin law, and also employment law modules. Now, one interesting fact about you is that you run the conflict resolution center at the MU. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, thank you, Eleanor. So the Conflict Resolution Centre is something that's new, that's developing at the moment, and it's an opportunity for students to understand and practice more about resolving conflicts, not just in the workplace, but also in other settings as well. So the idea behind it really is to, first of all, give students some training, but also opportunities both internally and externally to develop some of their skills. And what we're finding is these are really useful employability skills, but also it's a lot of fun as well. So there'll be more information about this when students return in September and October. So I'm sort of really encouraging students to sort of get involved and come and join us and, and have this opportunity, which I'm sure will be really useful for them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. So yeah, grab on to that, students, and get in touch with Jacqui as well. Obviously, the usual email address applies if you want to email Jacqui. So yes, today we are here to explore how to prepare for law exams, tips and strategies. And my question to you, Jacqui, just to start us off, I suppose, is why do you think this is so important or should be so important for students?
Well, I think that sort of takes me back to my own experience as a student. And when I did my law finals, every week they were published on the notice board at the institution where I was studying. And when you did well, it's fantastic. But when there were times when your results weren't very good, it's absolutely mortifying. So it really led me to think about, developing techniques for exams. And then on top of that, obviously, as a lecturer, sort of working with students, talking to them, answering their questions, and listening to some of their feedback, sort of helped me really develop a real interest in this area, and also made me realise how important it is for students to develop these skills. And I think one of the good news points is that actually these can be learnt by anybody, and it's not about being a know-it-all. It's not about being naturally fantastic at exams. They're just skills and techniques that can be developed, and they can work for anyone. So that's quite exciting, really.
Super, wonderful. Well, so what do you want to tell us about it? Where should we start? Where should we tell our students that they should start with all of this?
Well, it really comes down to sort of like the preparation. That's the starting point. And, a lot of people think immediately when they think of exams, it's sort of like horror and sort of like that attitude where it's going to be really difficult and really painful. But actually, it doesn't have to be like that. And there are ways can make it interesting, rewarding, and also sort of to develop new skills as well. So sometimes I say to students, imagine that you're in the workplace and you're asked to create a project or do a project. You would, in order to do that, you'd understand what the deadlines were, you might do some research, you would have certain milestones. So really thinking about it in a sort of positive framework really helps. So one question I always get asked is, how can I make it easy? How can we make it as painless as possible? And that really goes back to sort of the starting point is trying to attending the lectures and seminars. And we know that there's a direct correlation between students that attend seminars and the lectures and success in results. So that is definitely the starting point.
Mm.
And developing that knowledge, being familiar with the course, starting to make your own revision notes, and also using the resources that are available. And you'll know, Eleanor, that as tutors and lecturers are there to help the students, and we've got a lot that we can do. And things like exam sessions, mocks, drop-ins, directing students to the areas that are going to be relevant is all things that we can do to help and just make life easy for students.
There's a lot of support at DMU, and I think as a student, sometimes you're just taken aback and you feel like um, you just something stops students from approaching the tutor, and I don't know why. I mean, the message to you guys is just grab hold of your tutor, ask the questions, whether it's in person in person as in with your colleagues, with your peers in class, because they might benefit from the answer as well, but also just the tutor. So if you ask the questions or if you approach someone, I mean, everyone's got their own tips and tricks. I mean, if we were to ask all of the there might be a theme, obviously, all of the members of staff, they probably say the same things, aren't they? They're gonna say the same things.
Definitely. And I don't know whether students realise, but we actually have, it's very organised from our perspective. So the exam questions, what we're looking for, the tips, the sort of relevant materials, it's all planned in advance. So it's definitely worth using us as a resource. And you can save so much time. And so by sort of attending those sessions and engaging with the tutors, it's doing a lot of the work for you. So I'd really encourage students to do that and, and make the most of that. I think the other important thing is about having the positive mindset towards it. I mean, at the end of the day, the students, it's an assessment, it's set. You don't have, as a student, a lot of control over how the assessment has been set, but you can control and your attitude towards it and sort of embrace it as a challenge. So reminding yourself while you're doing it, I think is really helpful. So is it that you're trying to get a good grade or a qualification to do another course? Is it to get a better job or just your own pride and satisfaction? So what are your
Mm.
reasons behind doing it? And I know lots of students use sort of imagery boards and vision boards and things to just really help motivate them. And so it's
Mm.
whatever really works for you, but things like that can really help, particularly when you're sort of in the middle of it all and it just seems sort of endless. So having that attitude can really help, and sort of being your own cheerleader, reminding yourself that you can do it, and trying to find little ways to reward yourself along the way, whether it's listening to your favorite music or however you like to spend your time, just rewarding yourself, and and also sort of avoiding sort of circumstances that are quite stressful. So sometimes if you've got some of your peers who haven't done any revision and were a bit panicky, sort of avoiding
Mm.
those sorts of circumstances, so you can
Yeah.
really do your best job.
Well, your message there, I think, is just have a enjoy it. I think it's the enjoyable part that we're trying to put across here. I like that.
It
um,
can be,
I
yes.
Yeah. We should say that it seems daunting, but once you get a process in place, because every student is different, we are all different when we prepare for our own um, whatever it is that, presentations, conferences, and so forth. We all have our own approach, so just find your own. But sometimes, the exam. time or the assessment is approaching. And I think students leave it for as long as they can. So, what do we do about procrastination? Because I think that is a big thing right now for
It
everyone,
is.
for all of us.
Absolutely. And we're all guilty of procrastination and just sort of thinking, I'm just not in the mood to do this. I just cannot get myself going. So, what do we do? What are the tips really for those sort of situations? So, it's great, isn't it, when all's going well and you're feeling great but what about those days when you're not feeling so fantastic and you're not in the mood? So, I mean, I think first of all, I think, there's sort of what we call the carrot and stick method. So sometimes, for some people, giving themselves a little tap on the thing and saying, come on, if you don't do it, these are going to be the consequences. But that's quite limited. I think for most people, they respond more to what I call the carrot method, which is just really encouraging yourself. So one thing that you could just say to yourself is, I'm just going to do 10 minutes. That's all I'm going to do is I'm going to do 10 minutes. And one of the interesting things about tasks that we don't really like, once we actually get started, it's not too bad. It's that starting, isn't it? So you might say to yourself, I'm just going to do 10 minutes and I'm just going to, I don't know, just do it and then go and get a coffee and sit somewhere that I like sitting and just get my laptop out and do 10 minutes. And then often you'll find, oh, actually, I'm interested in this. I'll do another 10 minutes. So that's definitely a technique, just starting very small. Also, another way is working with friends. So,
Mm.
you might not be in the mood, but you can get and we'll say, we'll go down, let's go down to a coffee shop and let's just talk about the subject. Let's get some interaction going. Let's have a little test ourselves, make it a little bit of fun. So those are other ways as well. Another way as well is actually sort of thinking about, well, if I do this, then I will, give myself a reward. So if I do a certain amount this morning, this afternoon, I will have completely off and I will do exactly what I want. And that might be doing
Mm.
nothing, whatever sort of ticks your box. So it's just finding little ways to get yourself into it and
I
also just
really like
accepting.
that. And I like, sorry, you were saying something about accepting.
Well, it's accepting that this is part of being human. There's nothing wrong with you. We tend to blame ourselves quite a lot, don't we? And think there's something,
Yes.
what is wrong with me? But it isn't. I mean, we're
Ah,
all like this, and it's just working your way around it and being kind to yourself as well, I think is important.
yeah, getting to know yourself and how to make it better for yourself is it's a big thing. So you think if you can get to know yourself, I think that is, you're miles from you as a beginner. But I really liked what you said about involving friends as well. I mean, a good approach to this is also making friends in your course group, in your whatever it is that you're doing. Um, and let's say you've got a really good contract law student, and you get on, but they might have different views. They might have. I would definitely make friends with that person because sometimes, like that difference of opinion actually helps you with the critical analysis to demonstrate, like they make you demonstrate your point. And if you don't understand yourself, or you don't understand the point, it will come across. So if you get or you make a point of being in study groups like this, or have a study buddy or something like that, being able to just pick up the phone, not necessarily go for a coffee or whatever the case may be, and talking about things, yes, it does help our brain to, there's some sort of chemical happening that it makes, the wheels turn. So
It
yeah, I
does.
like that.
Yeah, and again, it's another fun variety way of doing it, and it can be something that can be integrated with other forms as well of revision. So there are lots of different ways of approaching this, and I think that's the important. They say that the variety is the spice of life, and I think with revision it's like that as well. To mix
Mm,
up different methods, and like you said, Eleanor, it's really what works for you. So there's no one prescribed way of doing it. It's know yourself, know what works for you, look at different techniques, and all of those things can help you.
mm,
One of the other points really that I wanted to make is about where you study. So And again, there's no prescribed best way. It really, it's depending on what you're doing. So, sometimes your revision might involve lots of paperwork and you might be better at a desk or you might want to be typing. But other times, if you're just thinking and doing mind maps, you might be just happy lying in your bed and doing it. Or you might want to, if so for some revision, if you're recording yourself, so you might record yourself, or explain things to other people. So again, you might just want somewhere sort of quiet, so again that might be your room that suits you. Or you might like being outdoors if it's a nice sunny day, just going and sitting outdoors with something. So again, sort of mix it up, just depending on the task that you want to do. One of the something that I found is on sort of background music and also background sounds. So if you're like somebody that likes a sound in the background, there is certain I think it's on YouTube as well. Coffeetivity, which has the sound of a cafe in the background, and it's just mildly background, but it's enough to sort of make you feel that sort of sense of being around people, but also sort of focusing on your work as well. So it's worth exploring what sort of
Mm,
background noise you want. Some people like it really quiet. Some people say, I really like my own music. But there are lots of different options as well. So it's definitely worth thinking about that.
very interesting points these, and I didn't know about the background sound, but yes, if nowadays you've got like forest sounds, that should have been a no-brainer. People start to put these on repeat as well, because if you've got a really good soundtrack, you just have to put it on repeat, and Bob's your uncle, you just get to go. Brilliant, fascinating. God. See, you don't think about all of these things. It's just exam preparation, paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. No, there's so much more to it. What about timing? Because once we've not procrastinated, let's just say we've gone over that hurdle, and we're now preparing. Time scaling, timekeeping, timetabling. What do we do?
Yeah, so it is important to have some sort of timetable, because you obviously have a limited amount of time and you want to be organized. And one of the things I say to students is it's really about being efficient with your time, because you'll have other commitments as well. I mean, you might be working, you might have childcare commitments, you've also probably got other exams as well. So it's all about being efficient. So it's not just about laboriously sitting there hour after hour just clocking up hours.
Mm,
It's about being really proactive. And so having a good timetable gives you that structure. And the other thing about having a timetable is you can sort of tick off or cross off when you've done something. And there's that nice sense of achievement, isn't there?
yeah.
And I've actually, and you can, at the end of the day, you can look and think, wow, I've actually covered these topics.
Mm,
And so, but the important thing about the timetable is to make it adaptable, because there will be times where you don't actually, you can't necessarily follow it. And therefore you need to have some flexibility there. Also, sort of having it in manageable chunks. So being realistic, how many hours, what are you actually going to cover? Making sure you've got some really good breaks in there and that you've sort of allowed time for your other commitments. Again, there are some apps that you can use. One's called Exam Countdown apps for people that like those, to give you some sort of support in that way. Or there's also, I've quoted some, I've referenced some materials at the end that give you more details about that. So we can look at those. So really sort of trying to spread your time evenly, being realistic, but also having a definite goal for each of those sessions. So having a goal that you're actually going to accomplish something. And really sort of like one question I get from students is really, where shall I start? What am I going to do? And so the first thing really is to understand what the exam brief is, to look at the brief, to know exactly what the instructions are, how many questions are you going to have to answer, what's the time frame, and some have some ideas of what is likely to be covered. So that's really your first step. Then sort of organising your notes. Now, hopefully you'll have some good notes, and sort of using the ones that have been given to you through the lectures and the seminars, but also some of your independent learning as well. But you really want to reduce these notes. You don't want to keep going through waves of notes. So it's really then sort of making them much more concise, and sort of sort of creating things like flashcards, post-it sticks, whatever, however you decide to actually use as your sort of your prompts. And then really having a go at some of the exam questions themselves. So you might have access to past papers, or your tutor may have given you some examples, or there might be a mock exam. So really just having a go and try and sort of replicate those exam conditions so that you really, can see what you're able to produce yourself. It's a good sort of dummy run. And then sort of like your
Mm.
final stage really is then sort of trying to memorize information, which we'll talk about, I think, in a moment.
Super wonderful. That I think that is a good list of steps that students could engage with and think, have I done this? Have I done that? Have I got everything? Brilliant. So what about, what can we say to students? These are the things that we're looking for. These are the things that you should be wary of to make sure that you put them in, or what are we looking for?
Yes, so I sort of mentioned earlier about the role of the tutor, the examiner, and it's very sort of structured from our point of view in the sense that there is a set marking criteria, and there are set points that we are looking for. So, from a student's perspective, just because you've raised something in class, or, you've expressed this before, we can't give any marks for that. We can only mark what is actually written on the paper. So if there's nothing down there, even though you're the most brilliant student in class, there's nothing that we can do. Also, just remind the students that most of the exams are anonymous anyway, so we don't even know who we're marking. So it's really, really important that you do yourself justice and get those points down. And that's, as examiners and as assessors, that's what we do. So we go through the marking criteria, we look for specific points. I think the other interesting point to remember is that we only have a set amount of points for marks for the whole paper, and also for the particular points that you've made. So there's no point as a student harboring on and on and on about a point, even if you feel personally sort of, sort of quite
Yeah, if
influenced
you
by
can,
it.
yeah, if you can feel very strongly about something and you're just passionate
Yeah,
about that.
because we can't do it. We might agree with you. We might think this is
Yeah,
fantastic and how interesting. But on
yeah,
our
two
marking
points.
schedule, yeah, that's all we can do. And, from our perspective, we have to be very consistent as we're marking as well. So that's why we
Yes.
are, on the whole, very restricted to this. So I think if the students can bear that in mind and realise like an even spread of points, making sure that you're sort of following the essay conventions. So things like having an introduction, a main body, a conclusion, even though it's not going to be as polished as an assignment, a written assignment that you've prepared beforehand, those basic
Mm.
conventions still apply. The other thing is that we mark a lot of scripts and we don't have a huge amount of time to go through each one. So making your points really clear, and making them so that we can see them, and that the important ones are actually expressed very coherently, so that we can pick them up and give you credit for them. Obviously, using examples. As lawyers, we love case law, but we don't want all the facts of the cases. We just want the point. So don't waste your time going through all the laborious facts of it.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we can't give you marks for those. So do try and use your cases, but keep it really concise. And again, if you're going to put some legislation in, just make sure that you use it properly. So from a lawyer perspective, and that's important.
super. Well, I can't even. I didn't imagine that you would have so much to talk about. This is very fascinating. Okay, so what about the revision? So we're now with the student, the planned for revision. How, tell us about, what do we do with our revision time?
Yeah, so we've talked about having a timetable and a structure, which is really important. But also, there's a huge amount of research that's gone on about revision. And the research comes back and it says it's really about making your revision sessions interactive.
Mm.
And just sitting there, just writing out notes isn't really going to help you a huge amount. So it's doing things like obviously being very curious, asking yourself questions, but actually doing things. So a lot of the research shows people who actually do something learn better. And we've probably got all examples, haven't we, of things that we can think about when we actually had to do it. It really, really homes in,
Mm.
our knowledge, our understanding. So if you can do things yourself, so for example, recording yourself, pretending that you're explaining it to somebody else, you're acting as a teacher, explaining it. Also using sort of interactive skills, things like there's a couple of apps as well that I put down here. Quizlet is one. You can create your own quizzes and quiz yourself. That's a good one as well. And really making your, using diagrams, charts, if you like visual, a lot of people like
Mm.
visual. So using those, you could even decide to create your own PowerPoint about a topic and imagining that you're delivering it.
Yeah.
Anything that actually gets you doing it. And the good thing about this is it's much more fun, isn't it, than just
Yeah.
poring over. So, the actual doing side of it is really important and it really embeds it in your understanding. And what you want to do is not just to be able to repeat it, but also to understand it, and it just makes it so much easier.
Brilliant. I mean, we do have CQs, we've got all sorts of exams, so engage with those. I mean, this is your message, isn't it? Engage with those elements, but make them more interesting, because I think our brains are helped by, like you say, location, they're helped by the interaction. And when you remember the information, you're remembering the smells, the um, coffee shop sounds and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about breaks? How do we manage all of this? Because this has to be a balance, and I like that you talked about it making it enjoyable as well. Uh, but how do we, what more can you tell us about
Well,
the process, I suppose?
yeah, so you're making sure that you are sort of taking breaks, making sure that so part of some of the theories of learning is about what we call scaffolding, which is building on your understanding. And that's why, we say start early because the best way is to really build on it and each session building on something more. And that helps you to actually recall things. So what you want to be able to do is obviously in the exam is not just understand it, to be able to recall it. So developing those skills and also making sure that you can recall it through sort of turning it into stories, putting yourself in the story, making it sort of personal in the sense of putting it into some sort of context that you can relate to. All of those things using rhymes, songs, associations, all of those things, and having a go at that, and then having a break and coming back to it, are really good ways and really effective ways that you can sort of prepare.
Yes, it's better to do it like this and not actually, panic about things and cram it all in a very short space of time, which some students do, don't they?
They do, and there's I sort of talked out a bit at the beginning about making it enjoyable and as pain-free, and that's what I've sort of we've been discussing. There is another way, obviously, when students haven't done any work at all and the timeline is looming, and I think it's just worth covering it here. But obviously, this is much more painful, so to be avoided. But I think it's still important to cover it. So, okay, you're facing this scenario where you haven't kept your plan or you haven't even made a plan and the timeline is looming, so what do you do? So again, try and keep calm. It's no point at this point saying I should have, that's for a later date. It's really about trying to get an overview, do a quick list of topics and themes, make yourself a plan with the time that you've got available, even if it's only sort of 24 hours. Use a
Mm.
timer for your tasks as well. You haven't got time at this point, you haven't got the luxury of time, so you need to keep it into 5-10 minute tasks so that you can really focus on those and then try and cover them again. Obviously using any spare time that you have. So if you've got a train journey or a bus journey, getting out the old revision and then reciting things, at this point, really just keep going over things, repeating it out loud, but really just sort of focusing on essential information. And again, sort of using sort of flashcards and lists, but obviously now the pressure is on, so you're going to be quite limited. So yes, it's not too late, even at this point. But obviously, it's to be avoided because it's not much fun, is it, if you're in this situation?
No, no. I think it just adds to that anxiety that you might then have just before the exam and the day of the exam. You don't want to get yourself into a state, do you? I mean, what should we do the day of the exam?
Definitely. So the day of the exam, it's really sort of making sure that you've had some decent sleep, making sure you've eaten properly, you're hydrated. Make sure you leave good time and you know where you're going. It's surprising. Even this year, I had students literally running into the room saying, I've been running around the campus, I don't know where to go. And I felt, and it's an awful way to start. So if you don't even know where the room is, have a little dry run, check if it's not a room that you're familiar with or a building. There's nothing worse than starting the exam, in that sense of panic. Before you get there, sort of reviewing your notes, avoiding sort of anything. So some people just like to be really focused themselves and avoiding other students talking about things that might send them into a bit of panic or anxiety. So be clear what you want to do, and who you want to meet up with beforehand, and obviously keeping calm, breathing. It's really interesting. I've been watching the football at the moment. I don't know whether anyone else has been, but one of the people that's been involved in the England team is this chap called Stuart Sanderman. And he's been teaching the England team about breathing techniques. And he's got a book called Breath In, Breath Out.
Breath in, breath
And I,
out.
I
Okay.
had a look at that, and it's really good, some really good techniques, not just for athletes, but learning breathing techniques can really help you as well. And that sort of helps for when you're actually in the exam as well. So
Super,
obviously,
that's brilliant. Oh, I love that. And thank you for the book as well. Thank you for suggesting it. I think breathing is life, isn't it? I think I was reading the other day something like if you're doing a breathing exercise every day, this was along the line of Hoff breathing techniques with his ice baths and so forth, that it might lengthen your life by 7 years. So yes, keep
yeah,
breathing.
yeah,
But do it, yeah, yes, exactly. Do it properly. Um, right. So we've talked about, the preparation. We've talked about the day of the exam. How about when we get ourselves sat down in the exam? You know, how do we attack the paper?
yeah.
What do
So
we
here you
do?
are, and first of all, congratulate yourself. You've
Yeah.
got there, you're actually there, you're breathing.
You made it in
uh,
the class on time.
exactly, you're on there, you found the right place. So okay, so now you're sort of just going to calm yourself down, reading the instructions carefully. And a good idea really is to scan the whole thing before you start, just to make sure you know exactly what's involved. And again, if there's some indications, some in advance, a lot of exams will tell you what the marking scheme is, but sometimes the marking will be different. So getting a good idea of what the marking scheme is. So it will indicate how much detail. So if you've got a mark that a question with 20 marks, then you'll know that that's more detail is required than something that there's 5 marks. So having an
Mm,
idea of that as well. And then choosing your questions. So I always suggest, and a lot of the experts as well suggest to do your best answer first. Get that in
mm,
the bag, get that down, and you can feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more confident, and it will help you then sort of with some of the more tricky questions. In order to do, starting off with some sort of plan or scribbling down some sort of memory aid is also quite useful. But do avoid sort of just repetition. Remember what I said earlier about the marking, we only have a set amount of marks. So, make a point and then move on to the next point. And also making your answer sort of quite professional. It's not a personal rant about something. It really is something to show, to demonstrate your sort of understanding. Obviously keep an eye on the time and pacing yourself, But if you do get stuck on a question, then do move on and you can always come back to it.
Mm,
So, a good idea is to leave some space between the answers to enable you to come back to those answers. If it's a sort of multiple choice question, again, read the instructions really carefully. And a good idea is to read the question and think, well, what do I think the answer is before you actually look at the answers that are given, because that will help direct you in the right way. Again, if you can't answer it, then do come back to it, leave a little mark and do keep working your way through the paper, because there are probably lots of questions that you can answer straight away. And then remembering that reading the answers carefully, so one word can make a difference. And I know, especially with SQE, some of the answers are very similar, but they're slightly different. So being really careful as you read those, not just jumping in and thinking, oh, so that's right. What about
mm.
guessing? If you get to the point and you just don't know what the answer is, well, first of all, sometimes it's common sense. One answer is so ridiculous that you can completely just, cross that out. That's not going to be the right one. Sometimes if there's two answers that are very similar, it's likely to be one of those is likely to be the correct answer because that's what you're being tested on. So do
Mm.
choose one of those. If there's a range and you don't know what the range is, normally sort of sometimes it's the middle of the range. So this is when we're into the art of guessing now.
The art
The
of
art of
guessing.
guessing. But definitely go for it. You've got nothing to lose. If you don't know the answer, just go for it and put something down.
Wow. What about the reflection at the end? Well, at the end, you're now at the end of the exam. You've done all of your questions. Maybe the time it's all done. What do we do? Because many of us, I mean, in my experience, you come out of an exam and someone starts talking about the particular
Oh,
questions that have come up, and I hate it. I hate it when students do that because it's unnecessary. I've already put my thoughts there. That's it. Let's just move on with our lives. So, what do we do? Do we go into the nitty-gritty of it and think about the
oh.
answer, or?
I think for most people that isn't actually helpful, and I think that a lot of people have normal feelings of like, oh, it went disastrously, I failed it, I wish I'd done this, and it's quite normal to have those sort of feelings. But actually, the best thing to do is really to try and move on from it, particularly if you've got other exams as well. So, put it to bed, park it for the time being, and then sort of move on to the next exam or next assignment, the next assessment that you've got to do. So I think on the whole, it's better not to compare yourself and limit the conversation with others because, they can be sort of a bit demoralizing sometimes. But, at some point when you get the results or, you can reflect. And if you've done well, congratulate yourself and also think, well, why did it go well? Why did this revision
Hmm.
go well? And get yourself some little pointers for next time. If it didn't go as well, again, sort of go through it and think, well, what do I think? How could I improve it for next time? And
Mm.
every time is a learning experience. And we talk a lot about at university about reflection, and it really does help. So it's worth having that reflection period when you're ready to do so that you can use all that knowledge and all those skills again, sort of going forward. So, at the end of the day, it's really important as well to sort of put all of this into perspective. Think about your own well-being, learning to sort of manage stress and, making sure that you keep all of this into perspective as well is important.
Um, Jacqui, as one last thing, if you don't mind, I know you mentioned some books previously. Do you have any books that you want to share with the students? Because obviously, I know that you've got a lot of recommendations, resources, and so forth that students could use.
Yes, I do. I've got a couple of resources that are available in the library. I've put them down here that are really good, and I really like them because they're well set out as well. They've got lots of pictures and diagrams and stuff like that. So one of them is we've got Stella Cottrell, who's the Exam Skills Handbook,
Mm.
and another one is the Study Skills book, Catherine Macmillan, which is really useful. And another one is the becoming a master student. So I've got actually some of them here that you can see, but you can
Oh,
see they're
right.
really user friendly. You can just dip in and dip out of
Mm.
them. You probably can't see the detail of them,
Oh
but
no, I can. There's some
yeah,
diagrams and some
it
tables.
is. And there's
It's
lots of
really
little
helpful to.
it is. There's some fun quizzes in there as well to get you to
Mm,
know yourself about how you operate. And also there's this one as well. So these are
building
available,
skills,
as I
but
say, some of them
mm,
are e-versions of it, so you can use it on your devices or you can go into the library as well. But there's plenty. I've got this one. This is a bit of an old one, but this also got some good tech tips. This is the Ellis one. Um,
super.
so yeah.
And of course, there's also the Breathe In, Breathe Out book that you mentioned earlier by Stuart Sunderman.
Yes, that's
That's
right. And he does YouTube, so you don't even have to buy the book. Just go onto
wowzers.
YouTube and have a look. And England are doing quite well, aren't they, at the moment? So we can't complain.
It must be doing something right. I think, historically, when you look at, I think another good book is Atomic Habits, and um, I can't remember his name, but what he talks about is um, the oh, I think it is for British cycling team.
Oh, okay.
I
Yes.
think so. When he starts talking about the habits and they're chipping away at various things, including shaving the hair off their bodies, just like small things like that, cleaning their bikes all the time, that would improve their speed. So, like you said, if this works for the England team, then it must be doing, it must be good. So, yes, every little change and every little habit that you improve about yourself with every exam, I suppose, you get better at it. So, yes,
Yeah.
your results should improve.
Yeah, and it is a work in progress. So, it's something that you can develop and skills, as I said earlier, that are useful for employability. So it
Mm,
doesn't just, sometimes students think, oh, it's pointless exercise and it's only people that are good at fast writing. That's not
mm.
true at all. The whole thing, the whole project of it is things that you can really use and examples and interview questions and when you're going for jobs about how you tackled this challenge and, the mental resilience that you developed as well as some of the techniques is really helpful.
Jacqui, this has been amazing, fascinating,
Um,
and I think there are so many tips that you have provided students with, and steps that they will never forget. Hopefully, it will make students improve their exam techniques. It will make students improve their mental health as well, because it's one of, I know we talked about it towards the end, but it's very, very important for students, because if you keep yourself calm, then you can do all of these things that we've talked about. Well, Jacqui, thank you so much for covering this wonderful topic, how to prepare for law exams, tips and strategies. Thank you very much, and thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in a different podcast. Maybe we will see you, Jacqui, in a different podcast as well.
I'd be delighted to, and thank you very much for asking me.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye, guys.
Bye.